Mayor and Commissioner and the Met Police.
But you're the mayor. The buck stops with you, so surely.
That's an easy point. The point is that we're a team. The Met Police and City Hall are a team, and I've got full confidence.
So you haven't met the bereaved families. You haven't made any public appearances on television or on a broadcast. You haven't done any walkabouts. You haven't been to the scene of any of the murders. I mean, Ian Duncan Smith, and I know he's a Tory, and I know their local elections and things are sensitive, but he's saying you're missing in action. Doesn't he have a point?
Well, I've been in a number of knife sweeps. I've met a number of families. I've been to funerals.
But you haven't met the victim before, but not now. The problem's now, Mr. Mayor.
I mean, look, I'm here talking to you, trying to explain some of the things we're doing. I accept there are elections in 4 or 5 weeks' time, and politicians will have an attack. That's part of politics. But actually, we've got bereaved families. We've got 2 teenagers who've lost their lives just in the last week. So as a father of 2 teenagers, it's personal to many of us who understand these problems. And I've got full confidence in the Met Police Service, but I'm not going to apologise for making the point, which is the context of the cuts over the last few years. I'm not going to apologise doing that. One of the jobs of the mayor is to be the champion advocate for our city. That means standing up for our city when we're facing massive cuts.
But that's the point, isn't it? One of the points main roles of the mayor is to be a leader, is to be seen, is to be out there front and centre when this city is in a really difficult spot and fronting up to the scourge of knife crime and gang violence. And many of our listeners on LBC will be wondering where you've been. I mean, we've been trying to find you for the past 3 days, and now we're on Thursday lunchtime. You could have been out on Wednesday lunchtime, you could have been out on Tuesday lunchtime. Indeed, you could have been out over the bank holiday weekend, but you haven't been.
Well, to be fair, the Deputy Mayor's done a brilliant job.
But you're the mayor. She's not. The buck doesn't stop with Sophie Linden, it stops with you, Mr. Mayor.
And I'm here.
Thursday lunchtime.
Well, hold on a sec. I mean, I'm here to talk to you as you'd expect me to do. So what I'm not going to do is do 24 interviews 7 days a week. But I'm always happy to talk.
You could have been out on Wednesday lunchtime.
Oh, that's unfair.
Could have been out on Tuesday.
But the police and the Deputy Mayor have done a great job.
7 dead in the last week. It's 12 dead. 12 people, 12 bereaved families. 12 people dead on the streets of London, and you have not made one public appearance.
Well, here I am, and I use a number of ways
Except you're too late. That was Sadiq Khan speaking to me just after lunchtime today. He didn't have the answers, Nigel. Simple. He didn't have the answers.
I tell you what, Theo, he may not have had the answers, but I tell you something, you had the right questions, and very well done you. You've asked the questions. I think that all of us would have wanted to ask. And I have to say, I find that response from him literally outrageous. I mean, he's behaving like a bureaucrat, not like a leader.
It's a very fair criticism, Nigel. The fact is, he's been known in London as the press release mayor. He's only too happy, his critics say, to stick his hand up and complain about government cuts or complain about underfunding for London, when the real problem is, what's he actually doing for London? He tries to ban Uber, his critics say. He's opposed the Garden Bridge, his critics say. But what's he actually done positive? And London, with this rise in knife crime, with this rise in gang violence, which we have seen since he has become mayor and even before, but what has he actually done to tackle the problem? And he hides behind government cuts, Nigel. But what's really interesting about this, and this is a true statistic, when you look at recorded knife crime in the capital from July 2013 to July 2017, it has risen 38%. And he complains about government cuts, but the interesting figure in the same period, when you compare the number of police officers in July 2013 to the number of police officers in July 2017, there's only a difference of 1.5%. They've only dipped 1.5%. And Sadiq Khan's trying to say, well, I don't have enough money. The number of frontline police officers in London is down 1.5%. Knife crime is up nearly 40%. That argument for Sadiq Khan just doesn't wash.
No, it doesn't. Theo, listen, well done. That is a great piece of journalism. Thank you. Well, Theo Usherwood there, absolutely getting the Mayor of London, I think, bang to rights. So what's behind all of this? Well, I have to say, folks, I genuinely believe that political correctness is leading directly to an increase in the numbers of people being killed on the streets of London. Why do I say that? Well, try this. On the 1st of April, just a couple of days ago, Britain's top cop admitted that police constables are too scared to stop and search suspects, despite an 8-year high in knife crime that has seen us overtake New York in terms of the numbers of murders. And she's saying that, this is Cressida Dick, by the way, she's saying that police were fearful they might get into trouble or might not be supported if they have a complaint. And the reason, folks, is this. most of this crime and most of the victims are members of the ethnic communities. They're happening in areas that have got higher numbers of ethnic communities. They're happening in areas that tend also to be poorer as well. And the police don't want the imagery of them picking people up, stopping and searching members of the ethnic community for fear they will be thought to be racist. And as a direct result of that, more members of the ethnic communities are being murdered. Equally, there are members of the white community that are being murdered too, but the figures are frankly overwhelming. And if you think that perhaps, what I'm saying is outrageous, well, take Sir Mike Penning, Member of Parliament, who wrote in the Sun, how many more need to die before we free our police to tackle this menace? Officers tell me that unless they see a weapon, they won't consider stopping a suspect. This is bonkers. Well, I have to say, Sir Mike Penning, we may not agree on many things in politics, but on this, you are absolutely right. So there we are. That is my contention. I believe political correctness is killing Londoners. If you agree with that, call me on 0345 6060 973. If you think, no, I'm wrong, it's all about the cuts, we should listen to what Labour have to say, Diane Abbott and all the rest of them, then of course you can text to 84850. Or maybe you think that it's down to social media. What? You say? No, that is what the Met Commissioner, Cressida Dick, said. She thought the rise in the murder rate could be because of social media. And if you agree or disagree with her, let me know on Twitter using the hashtag Farage and LBC at LBC. I have to say, I thought that interview was quite extraordinary. This man is not a leader. He's behaving like a bureaucrat. It's all up to everybody else. I can't believe it. I wonder what Wayne in Southall, who's a brand new caller to this show, makes of it all. Good evening, Wayne.
Good evening, Nigel. Must admit, this is the first time I'm going to be talking to a politician directly, and I've listened to you in the past. Well done. I've liked what you've had to say in the past. But this issue, this topic, has got me boiling. Because one, I am black. Two, I am old enough to understand what it was like from back in the days of the sus laws. I've seen the black people being taken advantage of and put into imprisonment, even though they've not done anything wrong. All of that I've experienced either through people that I've known, I've experienced through knowledge and understanding what's been going on. However, the situation that we've got right now, where we've got young children carrying knives or guns or acid, I think the government need to take a solid stance. And yes,
Wayne, you mentioned the sus laws, which in many ways was the police acting, and that was seen to be one of the causes of the Brixton riots many, many years ago, way back in 1981, and I remember that very well indeed. But Wayne, is there any problem right now with the police using their powers properly and putting stop and search back on the agenda, regardless of the colour of the people they pick up and search?
Right now, the police are able to wear cameras on their cells.
How about this?
So, and you can hear what they say, you can see what they do. Providing it is done clearly, providing the people can see what is taking place and hear what is going on, then we have a proper, correct record that can hold up in court.
Okay, so Wayne,
power to do it.
Wayne, do you want to see more stop and search, Wayne, in these areas where the murder rates are accelerating?
I believe where the murder rate is accelerating, although I'm old, I have a very young child, and I have a fear that one day he's going to say, Dad, I'm going to school on my own, I'm going to come home on my own. I have that fear that I might not see him again. Now, if it's going to be a case of somebody trying to entice him into drugs or entice him into carrying weaponry for some form of gang, I have that fear about him.
Yeah, well, that's terrible, Wayne.
To know that the police has the power to stop and search, and if at any point the police finds a gun, finds a knife on any individual, male, female, young or old, and I say young, stressing young, because sometimes the matured gang leader allows the younger youth to carry the knives and the guns because the younger youth get away with it.
Yeah. No.
The person don't.
No.
So
Wayne, listen, I your passion on this is absolutely clear for all of us listening. Just finally, Wayne, you heard the interview with Sadiq Khan. Do you have a message for the Mayor of London?
For the Mayor of London, I don't think it's a case of throwing the blame on the Mayor of London, because it's not just London. There is other areas in the UK that is suffering exactly the same. I do feel it is the politicians, full stop. Make the policy out there for the police in general throughout the UK.
Yep. Okay, to get on and do it.
With a knife, anyone with a gun, if they're caught, a minimum 6 months imprisonment, minimum, even if they haven't committed a crime.
Wayne, I agree with you 100%, and I thank you very much indeed for that call. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show, exclusive in LBC. It is now 7:17. Well, before the break, Wayne, I asked him, do you blame the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan? He said, no, I blame all the politicians for what's going on and this rising murder rate and the fact the police now appear, according to the Met Chief Cressida Dick, to be scared to use stop and search for fear that they will, of course, be accused of racism. Well, you're right, Wayne, because Theresa May was Home Secretary for a very long period of time, the longest-serving Home Secretary for 150 years. Now, she did in the early years have crime that was falling, which meant she felt more comfortable to cut back the size of the police force. But she very much introduced political correctness in policing. Look, we now have 900 Metropolitan Police officers dealing with hate crime. Now, look, I know that if people say horrible things to each other, that isn't very nice. But I would say this: sticks and stones may break my bones, but words can never harm me. Well, it's not wholly true, because words can hurt people and upset people and make them feel excluded. But where are the priorities of the Metropolitan Police, as led from the Home Secretary Theresa May for all those years down? Surely hate crime is not anything like as important as a murder rate that has now put us above New York. It really is time that we got real with this. And it makes me, I have to say, very, very angry indeed. On Twitter I get, isn't it about time that Khan apologises to Mr. Trump after he dared to criticise the out-of-control London crime rate? Well, I said this on this show 2 nights ago. I never thought I'd see the day when the murder rate in London would overtake that of New York. And I wonder whether the London Mayor, Sadiq Khan, should spend a bit less time slagging off Donald Trump and a bit more time getting to grips with crime in London, because clearly we have a real bad problem here. Well, that was my view 2 days ago. It's still my view now, that criticism of Trump is part of this whole political correctness. I get by text from Guy in E17, political correctness is definitely the problem in London. More stop and search is needed and much tougher sentences handed down to anyone illegally carrying a knife or a gun, the point Wayne made before the break. Too much tolerance and a softly approach to gangs. This must change, and quickly. Guy, I agree with you. Raheem is calling from New Cross, and he's a new caller to the show. Good evening, Raheem.
Good evening, Mr. Farage. This is my first time calling, so I'm quite nervous, but I just feel like, a lot of callers that are calling in don't have a clue about what's happening. I used to be in a gang, so I'm an ex-gang member, so I know exactly what the young people are going through. For you to tackle the problem, you have to start from an early age, like from these kids, from when they're in primary school, secondary school, you have to have police officers and ex-gang members going into schools, speaking to them and telling them the right things and also giving them advice and also, giving them the consequences of their actions, And I remember when I used to get arrested by the police and going into the police station, and what would happen? I would get no further action, and I would just get out of the police station and I'll go home. What I think,
Raheem, can I ask you?
Yeah.
Can I ask you, Raheem, how old you are now?
Yeah, I'm 22.
22. And when you were in this gang, and the police stopped you, were you ever found carrying a knife or an offensive weapon?
Yes, many times.
Many times.
Yeah, many times.
So you were picked up by the police many times, carrying a knife, and nothing ever happened to you.
No, see, this is the problem. The problem is that the police cannot prove. The police cannot prove that you've got a knife. I can have a knife and I can say police officer and I can just throw it away. There's no evidence that it's my knife. It's next to me, but it's not my knife. So the police. So you are talking about the police. The police should bring stop and search. That's just a deterrent. That's not going to stop anything from happening in the UK. You know, it's not going to stop the problem of these young people. What needs to happen is education. You need to educate these young people. You need to actually explain to them the consequences of their actions. You know, and like I said, you need to start from a young age. I'm talking about primary school and into secondary school, because in school that's where a lot of young people meet each other, bad and good kids, you know. And I feel like obviously that's not a problem alone, but I feel like I can.
No, Raheem, listen. I hear what you're saying about education. I get that, but let me ask you a question. If you knew when you were in that gang that if the police swooped on you, you know, with their new cameras on the helmets, and they found you with a knife or an offensive weapon, if you knew, Raheem, that you'd get 6 months in prison, would that have acted as a deterrent to you carrying a knife?
Again, you don't understand the thing about young people in gangs. Let me say one thing that's might even shock you. Yeah, let me just say one thing to this. You know, like when these young people that are stabbing people, you know, it's just like how people want to become famous. You know, when people want to be famous, they'll do anything. You know, they will do whatever they take, and they love the fame. They love what comes with it. It's same thing for young people in gangs. You know, when you stab a person or shoot a person, all the other young people are talking about you. Yeah, this person is this person did that, and you know, you get a lot of fame, and the young people don't understand these things. Don't understand that it's not a positive thing; it's a negative effect.
And Raheem, so you've now left this gang. And I'm very pleased to hear that. When you heard, Raheem, at the top of the hour, the Mayor of London saying that he hadn't visited any of the crime sites, that he hadn't spoken to the families of any of the victims, how do you feel the Mayor of London is doing?
But what does that got to do with? That has nothing to do with helping to stop the problem. So they can't go in to see the families. Doesn't solve the issue. The issue has to be solved. And you lot keep talking about the police bringing stop and search. That's not going to stop anything, because you're just going to stop any black boy or any black young man on the road, and you're going to give the excuse like because of da-da-da-da, and you're going to stop them. And I feel like there's a agenda here that needs to be stopped, you know, and I feel like I said, for me, the most important thing is you need to educate these young people, you know, you need to
Raheem,
make them understand.
Raheem has a problem with that. Raheem has a problem with that. That education takes a very long time. I understand the point you're making, but it takes a long time. What needs to happen with a murder rate that is rising rapidly now? What do the police need to do now, Raheem, to try and stop this escalating?
Look, this is not just happening today or last year. This has been happening for years. So this is nothing new. The only reason why it's becoming a big thing is because the people that are on the news, the people that you see on TV are getting younger and younger and younger. This thing happening all the time. The police hasn't done enough to stop this from happening from 10, 20 years ago. Do you understand? So obviously it's just going to carry on, and it's getting younger and younger and younger because of also, you know, these kids, they look at things on TV, social media, and everything you see is our society these days will glorify negativity, like gang, drug dealing. So what do you expect these young kids to actually do? Like, you know what I mean? Like I said, for me, please, one more thing. Like I said, the most important thing I think here is you need to educate these young people.
Well, Raheem, let me tell you, Raheem, for somebody who at the start of this call, as a first-time caller, said they were nervous, you've given us a pretty extraordinary explanation of gang culture in London, and I thank you very much for having the courage to come on and call. Raheem in New Cross, thank you for that call. Wow, depressing, isn't it, really? You know, Raheem says, actually, someone that goes out there and stabs someone gets fame. And that's seen in some quarters to be a good thing. Depressing. You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show, exclusive in LBC. It's now 7:30. Interviewed by LBC's Theo Usherwood, the Mayor of London admits he's not visited a single crime scene or spoken to any of the bereaved families. And you add that to the Met Chief Boss, Cressida Dick, saying that police constables are really quite afraid of putting in place stop and search in case they get criticised. You have this, I think, awful cocktail whereby political correctness, the police not doing the job they ought to be doing for all sorts of reasons, is leading directly to the death of Londoners. That's certainly my view. But a quick comment on Russia, which of course never goes away. Big, long press conference today at the Russian embassy with Ambassador Yakovenko. He said several things. Firstly, he said that Russia and the UK should conduct a joint investigation of the Salisbury attack. He went for Boris Johnson, saying it was wrong to say that Russia would have a motive for targeting Sergei Skripal. And then he went on to say that Russia has never produced Novichok. It's come from other countries, really. And he also said he's pleased that Yulia's condition is improving and he wants to see her return to Russia where she had a good life. Quite difficult to believe a lot of things that are said by the Russian embassy, is it not? Back to this problem. Chris in Watford says, where are the parents? Why do people blame everyone or everything but themselves? The parents, says Chris. Chris, in many of these areas, there aren't parents. In many of these areas, there is the absence of a father figure and a mother who probably is going out to work simply to make ends meet. On Twitter, I think that the police need to ask themselves what is more important, being politically correct or stopping someone and being wrong or being right and finding a weapon. That from another Chris. Well, I pointed out a few minutes ago, the Met Police are very proud of the fact that there are 900 police officers investigating and prosecuting hate crime every single day. And I'm not pretending hate crime doesn't matter, but I think the rising murder rate is a much bigger priority. That's my view. Paul is calling from Croydon, another new caller to this show. Good evening, Paul.
Hello, Nigel. How are you? You well?
Well, I am, but I'm really angry at the total I mean, it may not be Sadiq's fault directly that all of this is happening, but the job of a leader, surely when there's a crisis, is to be visible and to be involved. And frankly, he's been in hiding.
But surely you're in Washington, and that's the place where the leader is hiding at the best of times. So you've brought up a few examples of, we've got 900 police
hiding. Sorry, are you talking about the president who probably has done more public rallies and public meetings than any president in history?
Well, it depends on the subject, and sometimes he's very, very quiet, and sometimes he's very, very vocal. So you take, for example, your example of 900 officers in the UK investigating hate crime. Well, in the US, we just had the Parkland shootings, where the shooter himself was an advocate of hate crime, and everyone has complained that he should have been picked up long before this by the FBI, because of the hate crime that he'd been spouting. So, are we now
Paul, let me distinguish something here. If hate crime is calling each other names, that could be hurtful to people. But if hate crime is saying, I am going to go and kill people in a school, that is way beyond what I would call hate crime. That is somebody actually... Well, there is a big way to differentiate, and you know, we are now in... I mean, Paul, we are now in territory in the United Kingdom where if you even criticise one religion or another, just for criticising a religion, you can be thought perhaps to even be a terrorist. So I do think there are some twisted priorities here.
Well, we are in an interesting place in the UK where we have groups like the EDL having marches through the centre of London, and I've never seen anything like that before. So receiving leaflets and pamphlets from from groups like the EDL and from Britain First, where they're actually putting out tweets and messages, we're in a very interesting place. And there are some things, I mean, the police officers in the UK saying they're afraid to use their powers for stop and search.
Yeah.
Well, I've been around for a long time and lived in London for a long time. Stop and search was abused. It was an ineffective tool because it was abused. It was an opportunity to bully and harass people on the streets. They did it countlessly. Now, if you're going to do your job properly and you're going to do it above reproach and within the law, they know the law better than anybody else, and with body cams on, do your job. Don't be afraid of being accused of something, because the evidence will be there to do your job.
Well, that's the point, isn't it? Yeah, with these cameras, Paul, that is the point. By the way, can I point out, you talk about EDL marches and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
Back in the 1970s, there were big marches that took place. I can think particularly of a big National Front march that took place in Lewisham. So we have seen this stuff in the past. Paul, thank you. I'm going to move on. I'm going to go to Akshay, who's calling from Wembley. Akshay, is the London Mayor, Sadiq Khan, doing enough?
Well, with Sadiq Khan, I mean, I think it's I don't think it's fair to actually. I mean, you can certainly say, well, you know, should he or should he not have already made a comment on what's been going on? But actually, what I've found is that whenever Sadiq Khan ever says anything or makes any sort, I'm not Sadiq Khan's biggest fan, by the way, but whenever he makes any sort of comment or does anything, you know, it's there. You'll get comments. I don't know whether you've ever seen on his Twitter handle, but you get comments from so many people saying, "Oh, he's just there for the photo opportunity," or, you know, he's still not doing enough, and this, that.
Well, I tell you what, Akshay, that was almost suggested by LBC's political editor Theo Usherwood just earlier on. So there's a lot of people think that he's a mayor that sends out press releases, that criticises Number 10, but doesn't actually roll his sleeves up.
I think I think it's a difficult one because, you know, of course, you'd like to see the Mayor of London. You'd like to see a lot. You know, I think he mentioned that actually, I think the deputy mayor had been to see the families of the victims, and, you know, of course, it's a collective effort. You know, and it's a collective effort also in society in order to be able to prevent.
Him aside, Akshay. Him aside, Akshay. You know, we do have a crisis, a real crisis. What do you think needs to be done?
Well, I actually live in an area which has been blighted by knife crime, not just recently, but for a very long time. I mean, 20 years ago, I used to go to secondary school, and there, you know, a 14-year-old stabbed a 15-year-old to death. You know, that's 20 years ago we're talking. So this isn't a recent thing. It's been going on for a very, very long time.
It's growing, Akshay. It's growing.
It certainly is. It certainly is growing, and it's very, very concerning, of course. And it's something that we do need to address immediately. It's urgent. But like I said, it's, you know, for me, it is, you know, a situation where, for instance, you know, the secondary school that I was actually referring to is the secondary school where a lady was. There's a teacher who's now become the world's best teacher. Who's now been awarded as the world's best teacher. Part of that was because she actually gets out there and gets her hands dirty and says, well, you know, I don't want kids to be hanging around outside and getting embroiled in sort of you know, gang violence and all that sort of stuff, to get them sent home.
So education is one of the. Yeah, okay. Akshay, I've got to move on. I want to get some more voices. Thank you. Demetrius is calling from Dagenham, a new caller to the show. Good evening.
Hi, Nigel. How are you?
I'm angry. The mayor's not being a leader. He's behaving like a bureaucrat.
One thing I might say, though, your caller earlier, he called maybe a few calls ago, the young 22-year-old that was in the game.
Raheem.
Yes. That was probably one of my... I've listened to so many callers that have called out LBC, and I'm a young black man as well, probably 30s now, but that was one of my proudest moments, because so many more people like him need to come up and call and articulate themselves in a way to explain to a lot of people that have no clue what actually really is going on in the areas that they just can't see into. There's no kind of information that's going to come out except word of mouth, you know, that the areas that they really need to understand in order to fix the problem, because the problem is not just from one particular avenue. You know, he said something which was really true, which is about fame, notoriety. You know, it's hand in hand with the gun culture and the crime culture, and it's sad to hear. But there's other methods as well. For example, drugs is a major issue, etc., etc. Hate crimes is a major issue, etc., etc. And people are talking about ways to fix it and are focusing on one particular method. Now, with all due respect, Mayor Khan, Sadiq Khan, is not the solution. Whether he is out on the streets for the last 2 days, 2 weeks, it doesn't matter, because he's 100. When he said that was the most correct thing. He actually said it doesn't matter. He can't do nothing. What really needs to happen is people like him speaking up, and actually people from each individual sector, housing, schools, the homes, parents, policing. Someone made a point earlier and said, if someone gets caught with a gun, put him in jail for 6 months, mandatory. Where are you going to put them?
Well, Demetrius, I suppose the answer is if you have to build more prisons, you build more prisons.
Right, so that should be what people are talking about in terms of actually making a solution. Because I tell you now, if people started seeing prisons being built, for such and such, actually thinking that something really is going to happen, then maybe people will think, all right, we need to think about
think
what we're
again.
going to do.
Okay,
and also, what happens when you put them in prison is, well, who are you putting them with? You have to understand, prison is not a deterrent. It's a crime stop.
Demetrius, if there was one thing you could do right now, what would it be?
I don't know. Put it this way. If we, and I agree with you on some things, I don't agree with you on some other things and so forth, and I know you've heard that many times, but
sure.
It's hard for me. I don't have the answer. I'm not a politician, but if we have people in positions that govern areas of the whole country that have no background in it, and we're trying to solve the internal problems, it makes it very difficult to give you an answer. You and Raheem have made this point that actually most of us just have no idea what is going on in terms of the culture of these gangs. I thank you very much indeed for your call. I've got to move on. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. It's now 7:46. Well, thank you. Breaking news. We've heard, in fact, we had some text coming in to LBC. Within the last hour, there's been a double stabbing in Mile End, in the East End of London. The Met have now confirmed that 2 people have been taken to hospital. The stabbings are not fatal, and there has been 1 arrest. That has happened within the last hour, whilst we have been on air. It is happening out there. I get on Twitter, police need to be out there harassing these gangs nightly, even if they aren't carrying knives. Marilyn says, I have never heard anything so negative that kids kill because it brings fame. How about joining a football team or becoming an artist or musician or getting fame that way? Well, Marilyn, one thing that I have been struck by, by 2 callers who've said that most of us haven't got a clue about this gang culture, and they're probably right. The one thing I'm struck by is actually, are we through schools or through local community youth groups, are we actually giving youngsters incentives to be good at football or good at art or whatever it is? Or are they frankly just going through the motions at school and not finding inspiration or leadership from anywhere? I don't know the question, but I raise it. Kelly on Facebook says, the police are scared to be called racist. The government need to let the police stop and search and become less political. Pamela says, respect starts in the home. If there are no boundaries to begin with, what chance do we have? Pamela, I want to make this point again. There are many of these communities where there is a complete absence of a male father figure, and in many cases, mum is out working just to make ends meet. There are an awful lot of kids who are effectively home alone, who do not appear to be getting involved in sport or many other things, and they fall into gangs and fall into trouble. Jake is my next caller from Brighton. Good evening, Jake.
Good evening, Nigel. Great to speak to you again. I spoke to you a while ago.
Good to speak to you.
Yeah.
So Jake, tell me, I've said that I think political correctness is directly leading to an increase in murder in London. Do you think that statement's over the top?
I think it's a little bit more nuanced than that, Nigel.
Okay.
It's a bit of maybe it's a bit of a sensationalist statement. Not to have a go at you for that, but I think possibly there's many facets. There's many facets to this, and I think one of the most important things that was mentioned by your previous caller, Raheem, who was absolutely brilliant, by the way. And again, I'm from Brighton, so I understand why people from London are calling in mainly, and I understand that that's it's more sort of germane to them, and and I get that. But I feel that I've seen things in the past, and I feel that this issue around fame and popularity and it is really under-addressed. These people, they have this, especially the young people, they have this real urge to want to be noticed, be famous, be liked, money, all these things, really quite infantile things, really, when you think about it. And a lot of these people, they need to sort of, because a lot of these people grow up deprived and poor, and I just feel like that is one of the main catalysts for why they get involved in these things, and it needs to be, we need to address that. And so really, I'm sort of echoing what Raheem said, and that education is primary.
Yeah, but the problem, Jake, is that to get a change in society through the education system is going to take you at least 5 years, and actually, Jake, probably 10 years.
But all things that are worth all good things that are worth doing and need to happen, unfortunately, do take time. When you go through a degree, it takes time. When you go and study, it takes.
Jake, I accept that point. I accept that point, but how do you respond to the fact that there's been a double stabbing in Mile End whilst we've been on air, and that the pace of this is accelerating? Jake?
Maybe a curfew.
A curfew?
Possibly. It might sound a bit drastic, but
wow.
So I've gone from one end of the spectrum to the other. But okay. But if we're talking drastic right now measures, then something like that might need to be implemented. But I think the long-term goal cannot be overlooked, Nigel.
Okay, Jake, no, you make the point, you make it beautifully, thank you. A lot of people, I think, actually very fascinated by that call from, he said he was nervous, Raheem, he'd never called before, but he's made quite a lot of us think. So, a curfew, says Jake in Brighton. I think, and yet, I get, on Twitter, curfew. All under 18s, in cities, have to be home by 9 o'clock, no excuses. Well, all I can say to both of you is good luck with enforcing that. Jay is calling from Newham and is a new caller to the show. Good evening, Jay.
Yeah, good evening, Nigel.
So, what do you think?
All right, here's the thing. A lot of people need to understand that when you're talking about the gang culture, you're talking about just that, a culture, a mentality, a way of life for so many young people who view stabbings and shootings and going to prisons as part of life. It's normal. Do you understand? So when you talk about putting more police on the streets, it's not changing anything. It's not going to make it any better because these kids don't fear the police. They don't fear going to prison. Do you understand? A lot of these kids rather carry a knife and run the risk of going to prison than not carry a knife and run the risk of being killed. It literally is. The mindset for a lot of these kids is kill or be killed. Do you understand? Just today, my nephew and my little brother, who are both 17, said that they're now contemplating themselves having to carry a knife because of a stabbing that happened in Walthamstow earlier this afternoon. And they were like, you know what, this is actually getting out of hand. I'm thinking of actually carrying one for my own safety. So a lot of these kids, it's not about the police. Do you understand? They're fear because at the end of the day, the police 9 out of 10 times shows up after the stabbing, after the shooting, after someone's been killed. Do you understand? It's a mentality. It's a culture. It's a way of life. Look at the United States. People said, let's get as tough as the United States. Has that helped the United States? Of course not.
Oh, well, Jay, Jay, when Rudy Giuliani was mayor of New York, he put some very, very tough, street policing, dealing with even little things like graffiti and broken windows, and he did radically bring down the crime rates in New York.
It didn't get rid of it. New York.
Well, Jay, you'll never get rid of it. You'll never get rid of it.
Exactly, and that's my point. There is no.
But what worries me, Jay? What worries me is this.
Solution. There isn't one. There isn't. You're not going to get rid of gang culture.
Jay, what worries me is this. You've said, that you've spoken to some of your family today, and you yourself are considering, for the first time, carrying knives. Is this, in your opinion, now escalating out of control?
It is. Do you understand? It really is, and I think something else has to be done. I don't know what for me, but I'm just sad and I'm heartbroken every time you hear another. And the worst thing about it is we as black people, we need to be real. We need to actually confront this issue and say, you know what, this is something that's affecting our issue. There's a lot of people in our community who say, yeah, it's not only our community, it's not only a black thing. Yeah, it's not only a black thing, but the vast majority of kids that are dying on the streets are young black men. The vast majority of kids who are going to prison are young black men. So if we as a black community don't actually stand up and say we need to tackle this and ask ourselves, what is it about young black kids from the most deprived areas of London or Birmingham or Manchester that's leading to them being killed on these streets? Do you understand? There's a system that needs to be broken. I don't know what it is, but it's getting out of hand, and putting more police on these streets is not going to help. Look at Carnival, for example, Notting Hill Carnival, probably the single most policed event, do you understand, in Europe. Yeah? How many stabbings going in Carnival?
Too many. So that
too
many. Jay, I thank you. I've got to move on. Jay there, frankly, giving me the impression that this is about to get a lot worse. And I've got time for one last caller. Mohammed in Camden Town, new caller, very short on time. Please make your point.
Hi there, Nigel. It's me, Mohammed. What Jeff was talking about, I strongly agree with what he's saying and stuff like that. Also, the fact about how media is really, took a turn on these, and how these youngsters are listening to music and how they're portrayed. It's all about gang life, gangster, gangs, all this stuff, and it's really like I think there should be regulations to how they portray all these musics and all those stuff.
Well, Mohammed, you've raised a really good point. Isn't it true that much of the music people are listening to actually has very violent lyrics in it?
I mean, I'm a young person myself. What you said, that is true. I see your point of view, but then you need to understand how, in this time, in this situation, in this era of these young people, this is our life. So, this is what we think. This is what we think Britain is. This is what we think, the streets are like. So, I get what you're trying to say, but it's just the idea.
Mohammed, I thank you. We're out of time. You're the third caller that said there is a disconnect between much of society and what is going on in gangland London. The fact it's happening in London, folks, doesn't mean it won't spread to any cities. I found the last hour, I have to say, profoundly worrying. You've been listening to the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC. I'm back on Sunday morning at 10 o'clock. At 10 tonight, it's Ian Collins, but up next, it's Clive Bull.
Nigel, thank you very much.